You know, we're about to dig into an idea that probably more than any other dictates the rhythm of your workday. And it didn't start with some grand theory, but with a really simple tool, the stopwatch. This is the story of something called scientific management and how it basically created our modern obsession with productivity, targets, and efficiency. Seriously, just think about that for a second. Your deadlines, your quotas, those daily targets you have to hit. Where did those numbers even come from? They don't just pop out of thin air, right? Well, the whole practice of measuring work down to the second has a very specific and, honestly, a pretty surprising origin story. And it all kicked off with one guy. So, here's how we're going to break this down. We're going to start in the total chaos of an early factory floor. Then, we'll see how a stopwatch was used to try and build the perfect worker. From there, we'll get into the new rules of efficiency. And finally, we'll unpack the pretty complicated legacy this whole idea left behind for all of us. Okay, let's paint a picture. It's the late 19th century, right in the thick of the Industrial Revolution. Factories are everywhere, churning out goods like crazy. But inside, it's a mess. Management, as we think of it today, just doesn't exist. It's really just a bunch of supervisors trying to keep things from falling apart. All of a sudden, you've got this massive explosion of workers packed into these giant factories. But the managers had a huge problem. How do you actually know if you're getting a good day's work from somebody? There was no standard, no benchmark. There was no way to even define what a good day's work even was. And this is where our main character enters the story, a man who looked at all that chaos and thought, you know what, this place could be run with the precision of a science lab. And that man was Frederick Winslow Taylor. He saw the factory floor not as a mess, but as a giant puzzle begging for order. His goal was pretty radical for the time. He wanted to replace all the guesswork and old traditions with a system of precise scientific measurement. He became obsessed with finding the one best way to do any given job. And his favorite tool for this? The motion and time study. The idea itself was actually simple but completely revolutionary. It was this: stop looking at a job as one big thing. Instead, break it down into its tiniest possible movements. Every reach for a tool, every turn of a screw, every single step. Each little piece was to be isolated, analyzed, and timed. So to make this real, just imagine someone operating a big lathe machine. To Taylor, that wasn't one single task. No, it was a whole sequence. You hold the job, you clamp the tool, you adjust the speed, you set the cut, and so on. And he would stand right there, stopwatch in hand, timing every single one of these tiny steps, over and over, just looking for the fastest, most efficient sequence possible. So after all that obsessive timing and analysis, Taylor would land on a single, really powerful number, the standard time. Now, this wasn't a manager's guess or what someone's grandpa used to do. This was a scientifically calculated declaration of exactly how long a job should take. And that one number, well, it was about to change everything. So, once you have this all-powerful standard time, what do you do with it? Well, you apply it directly to the workers and you turn a simple measurement into a pretty powerful management tool. It feels like it happened overnight. The whole nature of work just shifted. Now, every single worker had a clear, scientifically backed target for their day. Management could walk up and say, with data to prove it, you will produce X number of units in your 8-hour shift. All the ambiguity was just gone, replaced by a cold, hard number. And this created a really high-stakes environment for every single person on the floor. If you hit your target, you were rewarded. You got bonuses, better pay. But if you fell short of that scientifically determined standard, you could face wage cuts, or you'd be forced into retraining to learn the one best way. It was a crystal clear system of carrots and sticks, and it was all dictated by that stopwatch. Now, Taylor's ideas weren't just about individual tasks on the factory floor. They grew into a complete philosophy for how to run an entire organization, top to bottom. His principles created this complete top-down system. It all starts with setting those production standards based on the time studies, right? And from there, everything else just falls into place. You measure productivity, you design incentives to drive it, and you train the workers who can't keep up. It was designed to be a perfectly logical machine, built for one thing and one thing only: maximum output. See, Taylor wasn't just working in a vacuum. The Industrial Revolution created the problem, and then in 1911, he published the solution. His book, The Principles of Scientific Management, basically became the Bible for industrialists like Henry Ford. His ideas on things like the assembly line and mass production, they would go on to define the entire 20th century. But, like any idea that completely changes the world, Taylor's legacy is a real double-edged sword. This relentless pursuit of perfect efficiency created incredible productivity for sure, but it also came at a very, very human cost. So it's really important to understand what scientific actually means in this context. It doesn't mean the system was perfect or always right. It just means it was a system based entirely on data and rational analysis. The whole goal was to remove the unpredictable variables, human intuition, emotions, judgment, to get them out of the process of work. And this brings us right to the central conflict of Taylor's legacy. On one side, the goal is pretty hard to argue with: achieve maximum efficiency through rational analysis. But the critique is just as powerful. To get that efficiency, you kind of have to treat the worker not as a person, but as just another component in the machine, a cog to be optimized, timed, and, if needed, easily replaced. So why are we still talking about a guy with a stopwatch from over 100 years ago? Well, because his ideas are baked into the DNA of our modern economy. Seriously, every time you see an assembly line or get a performance target at your job or hear about a management consultant coming in to optimize a workflow, you are seeing the ghost of Frederick Taylor at work. And all of this leaves us with a final, really crucial question. In our constant quest for ever greater productivity, are we still just grappling with Taylor's original dilemma? Is there a way to be incredibly efficient without sacrificing the human element of work? The stopwatch is still ticking, and honestly, that's a question we're all still trying to answer.